They tell you what to think. They decide what you should hear and what you shouldn't. Not here. The Western Standard does not bow, bend, or beg for approval. No spin, no handlers, no watered-down headlines. Just fearless Western journalism. If you believe the truth belongs to the public, not the powerful, then you belong with us. Join us at westernstandard.news.
Good day! Today is November 5th, 2025. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard, and you're watching The Pipeline. I'm joined by the usual gang here, Western Standard's former opinion editor, Nigel Hannaford.
Nice to be here.
Western Standard senior Alberta columnist, Cory Morgan.
Always a pleasure.
And Western Standard BC columnist, Elise Mills.
Hello. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Elise.
Actually, a little housekeeping business. The Western Standard is growing. We're getting a man back on Parliament Hill. It's been some time since we used to have a full-time reporter on Parliament Hill, but we just haven't found the right person till now. We're putting Western Standard columnist William Barclay has been promoted, and he is going to be our full-time Parliament Hill correspondent, starting effectively right now. We just had him in the Calgary office here for a few days for training. And we've sent him back out east to go do God's work. We're also getting someone back up at the legislature in Alberta here, full-time. Another William. He's got a French last name. William V, I'm going to call him for now. I'm having a hard time pronouncing that French name. But yeah, we're on the march. Western Standard growing, getting a full-time presence at two very important spots for us in Edmonton and Ottawa. All right. Well, Total Recall is on. The Alberta teachers are really pissed off now, working with known Marxist Gil McGowan of the Alberta Federation of Labour. They're trying to recall every single Alberta United Conservative Party MLA, which is interesting. I think they might have a little better luck if they focus on just a few guys, which is what they kind of ostensibly started with. But anyway, hardcore union guys promising to recall every single conservative MLA in Alberta, which would be hilarious because then you would just call an election, which the NDP is not poised to win right now, so that'd be kind of funny.
Yeah. Who's the NDP leader again?
Some purple dude at Grimace.
Some guy. Some effing guy. So, anyway, fun stuff there. We're going to talk about the secret Liberal majority. On paper, Mark Carney's Liberals won what is technically a minority in the last election, but with a floor crossing and a few other little bits of finagling, I think there's a de facto majority here. Other people might disagree with me. A lot of people have been saying there's an election coming, the budget might not pass. I think you're dead wrong. I think the budget's definitely passing, but I don't know. We'll see. We're going to debate it, but that's my theory, that the Liberals have a secret majority government right now. But speaking of budget passing, Nigel, you wrote a very good column on the budget here. The Liberals have, we're borrowing $70-odd billion. It's the biggest deficit in the history of Canada outside of COVID. Still bigger deficits we ran in either World War or Korea or Afghanistan. So it's biggest non-pandemic deficit ever, because pandemic budgets are bigger than wartime budgets, apparently. And the Liberals has a very creative branding around what they call debt now.
So look, I want to give the watchers something firm to grip onto. We can get into all kinds of theory, and in a moment I will. But what I would say is that this is an inflationary budget. If you want to do yourself good, reduce your debt and trim your credit cards. This is not going to go well. So what they've done, and it's interesting that Mark Carney actually promised to do this when he was campaigning back in April. He said then that he would borrow $250 billion. And I thought, well, that's an odd thing to go campaigning on. But he said it. And I was so unsure that I went back and checked it out. And sure enough, there it is. The ever reliable CBC has it. So they're condemned from their own mouths. And then we get this budget, and he borrows somewhat more than $250 billion in the next few years, starting in this fiscal with a $78 billion deficit. Now, when the numbers get that big, I think we all tend to kind of eyes glaze over. But let me put it this way: when income and expenditures are equal to each other, then we call that a balanced budget, and that's what we had in 2015. Now we are running a 1 year. We are going to go $78 billion in the hole, and next year 65, and the year after that is 50 something, and who knows what it'll actually.
That's if they stick to
That's
the
it.
deficit reduction target, which we should note for the last decade, the liberals have never done once.
Nope.
Ever.
Right. So it was a good thing. So what I'm saying is this is going to hurt. Before we even get into the specifics of the budget, there's a 493-page document, so it's going to be very superficial. Let me just give you a couple of the main things. If you wanted to say this is a good budget, what you would point to is that finally somebody is doing something about defense. They have committed a lot of money, $80 billion, to rebuild, rearm, and recruit, reorient. They would, you would talk about the natural resources emphasis, and then you would try not to go back and talk about some of the details of that, because actually there's nothing good in that. You would talk about the $115 billion infrastructure blitz, historic investments in industrial corridor, all that stuff, housing hyperdrive, $25 billion. And you could make the case, but when I try to do that, I see the defense. It's very hard to spend the money. You can give everybody a pay raise, and after that, where do you get the stuff that you want to buy?
Wait, we can't do procurement. So.
We can't do procurement. We're very bad at that. The infrastructure blitz. Look, create the situation where people want to do business in Canada, and you will not have to spend $115 billion of taxpayers' money to build the infrastructure. It is the failure of this government over the last 10 years that means that nobody's interested in investing, and therefore they have to use taxpayer money to do the thing, the industrial corridors, the ports. The $25 billion for new houses. You really want a house that's built by the government? They'll never get that out of the door. So really, all of these are great ideas. If you're a technocratic prime minister, then, wow, have we ever got a plan? It's going to depend how the implementation goes. Meanwhile, we're going further and further and further into debt, and that is going to cause inflation.
Elise, one of the interesting parts for Western perspective, and maybe Newfoundland here, is, at least, the headline was the Liberals are getting rid of the emissions cap. Well, kind of, but it's an emissions cap if necessary, but not necessarily an emissions cap. Canadian, archetypal Canadian, have it both ways. Champagne, the finance minister, says, well, okay, the emissions cap is probably not good if we're going to be elbows up and Canada is going to do its own thing here. So we can get rid of it if Alberta and then other producing, BC's got, it's LNG under what it could be, but it's a thing. We'll get rid of the emissions cap if you guys do this. Could you tease that out a bit more?
Well, I can't think just about the emissions cap, to be honest with you, because I consider it a part of a suite of serious issues that are plaguing even the best laid plans. So let's just say that we buy into this budget. And the idea is that they have the emissions cap, which is we're going to take it away, but we're only going to take it away because we don't need the cap. I still don't quite understand the fantasy land, but let's get back to what's really important here. And Nigel brought this up, the question of who wants to do business in Canada. And then let's reverse engineer this out to their $500 billion plan to go to the investment banks and find private capital. Nobody's going to give this money to Canada, especially since we still have all the levers in place, or all the legislative impediments in place that have prevented the organic investment that should be in this country. The tanker ban's still there. The emissions cap is there. We can't build pipelines, and we can't get to Tidewater. So that's a big issue. We have interprovincial regulatory environment that is frustrating, and investors don't want to deal with it. I'm not so sure who's lending us this money, and how somehow we're going to have this. We're going to be the most competitive country in the G7. There's a lot of fairy tales that Minister Champagne spoke to yesterday. I had to laugh. I didn't know whether to laugh or just scratch my head. I was beginning to wonder if I was the patient or the visitor in this, and somebody's going to find that analogy quite offensive, I'm sure. But so, number one, he starts off in his interviews talking about how this budget's made us the most competitive, yet we still have an emissions cap. We still have all the barriers that impede our energy sector. We have a red tape wrapped up forestry sector that can't get out ahead of itself. And we have zero appetite for foreign investment. Just in the first 3 quarters of this year, we lost $1 billion of organic foreign investment. What does anyone think is going to happen when we go to Bay Street, or we go to New York and we say, hey, we'd love $500 billion. I know you didn't want to give it to us. I know you walked away, and I know all the things that you complained about are still there, but I promise you, this is going to be transformational. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And to be honest with you, I don't know about the 3 of you, but I watched yesterday, and I'm actually I'm focused in on stuff that my work in the United States right now. I have to be honest, I just watched it. It was like a clown car zooming by. I realized that this was just a spend-a-thon. None of what they had put in paper was realistic, apart from the cuts to the public service. But they inflated the CBC again. To be honest with you, I just want to throw the whole thing in a dumpster and light it on fire, because that's exactly where this country's going to be in a matter of weeks and months.
Cory, a lot of people could be mistaken for believing the carbon tax was gone when President Mark Carney signed his executive order abolishing the carbon tax. That was one half of the carbon tax. That was the consumer-facing one. There is the industrial one as well. That fits in to what we're talking about, the emissions cap. The emission cap is gone, but
yeah, the industrial carbon tax is still there, and it looks like Mark Carney's looking to, that's one of his caveats to get rid of this emissions cap, is that we're going to hike the industrial carbon tax. So we're going to slam producers with a giant tax increase, essentially, in exchange for raising the carbon or the emissions cap. All these words and this baffle-gab and this garbage, and it gets tiresome. The bottom line is they're maintaining their attack on Alberta's energy sector, and we are going to remain an investment pariah as we try to develop.
So if they make the price $170 a ton, it's $80 a ton right now, what's that going to do to the competitiveness of Western oil? Not Eastern oil, by the way. They don't have to pay this, but the Western oil, we're trying to sell it anywhere.
Well, it's there. We already sell it at a discount due to our lack of access to coastal waters, and this just makes the margins all the more narrow to produce here. It means we have to have much higher commodity prices in order to remain functional. Again, when we're looking at a world market, we're looking at world investors. People are going to look at Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, and just, they're going to shake their heads. No, we'll put our money into places like Norway, where they're expanding on the North Sea. Places like Saudi Arabia, where they don't really care about environmental concerns. And meanwhile, we'll just languish on our shut-in resources with limited amount of export. It's bad. It's just bad in general. The only bright light we might have had in this budget, the producers, we have the balance between public sector and private sector in Canada is becoming terribly skewed. And when you crush the resource markets, these are the only guys funding it anymore. This is bad.
Well, maybe we'll get a nice price spike when Donald Trump invades Nigeria. I mean, they're a major oil producer with zero environmental regulation
Or human rights.
Yeah. So when we begin the fifth crusade to go into there, Elise, I mean, this whole budget discussion is also wrapped up with the ability to pass the budget. It's a confidence vote. If the government cannot pass its budget, that triggers an election because the House does not have confidence. Election night, the Liberals came within a hair of securing a majority. They even had one MP win and I say win generously in Quebec by one vote. And that appears to have been dubious. I don't know why we have not redone that election yet. But the Liberals are up another seat as of yesterday. The Conservatives kind of preemptively booted a guy who was openly musing about joining the Liberals. Last name was D'Autremont or something.
Laurence d'Entremont.
D'Entremont. Okay. All right. There you go. Your French.
Friends just can't master your French.
Your Quebecois better mind. Anyways, but he's a Nova Scotia guy. He's saying, I'm a red Tory, and my God, this Polyev is so right-wing. I'm pretty sure you knew who you were running. Like, he just got elected. He was at a very narrow margin riding where, he'd have at least equal, if not better chance of getting reelected as a Liberal. Who knows if there was inducements or not. We wouldn't know that. That kind of thing is done hush-hush when it is done. But at least the Liberals now stand at 170 seats. Is it two shy of a majority?
Two.
Yeah. Conservatives 143, 22 block, 7 NDP, 1 Green, 1 vacant. So, I mean, you throw a bone to Elizabeth May and coax one more Conservative over, got your majority. NDP, they've been totally nuked. They're in no position for an election. They don't have a leader. They have a gigantic debt that they're carrying. They're the party that wants an election the least. They've openly mused about abstaining for the budget, not voting for it, but abstaining. That would allow it to pass. My theory has been since election night that the Liberals have a de facto majority government here. On paper, it's a minority, but they would have to go out of their way to intentionally lose a confidence vote at this point, I think.
Yeah, I completely, I'm on the same page you are about this. I've always felt that the Liberals had the majority, that this wasn't something that was even debatable, quite frankly. I will say it was interesting to see Elizabeth May yesterday. Boy, was she angry about the cancellation of the 2 billion trees that were planted. I will be honest, I kind of agreed with her until Mulcair. If we're talking about emissions caps and we look at all the forest fires, we kind of could use the trees. They're one of the best cappers of emissions, quite frankly. And,
that's true, but I think the 2 billion trees promise was just seen as wildly unrealistic. It was typical Trudeau government announce these preposterous numbers that feels good and then do zero to execute it. A lot of people have said the announcement is the action. That was the whole point, is just to announce it because it feels good, and then they just move on.
Performative. So, very performative. Plus, there was an agreement.
I don't think they're really canceling 2 billion trees. They're just like, we're obviously not going to do it. We were never going to do it. So I thought it was actually kind of honest.
Well, and they also have agreements with like the Prince of Wales's trust. At full disclosure, I worked with them on and off on some of this stuff. It would be kind of embarrassing for them to unwind themselves completely. But anyway, I just had to point out Elizabeth May because yesterday was, I think, in the highlight reel of one of her greatest hits. And then there was Don Davies from the NDP going, "Oh, I cannot believe we're cutting this and this government." And all I was thinking was, okay, this is the NDP that's been propping up this Liberal government since 2021. So you need to just move aside. But you're absolutely right. This government has that majority. But I will tell you, Yves Blanchette, the leader of the Bloc, he is very feisty. I think he's one of the best opposition leaders we've seen in a while, probably since Tom Mulcair in the days of Stephen Harper. I always enjoy his press conferences. It's okay to be offended when he talks, but his scrum yesterday, I think, really spoke to an issue that Conservatives are going to have with one another, and what Conservatives are looking at with the future of the party. The problem is none of this budget stuff, or whether it's a vote of confidence or whether we call an election, none of this is going to be about principle. It's all going to be about winnability. And when the party is polling 10 points ahead of where Pierre's polling, the Liberal or the Conservatives are not going to pull the trigger, even though they should damn well pull the trigger. And that's where I am today as a fiscal conservative. I believe that the right thing would be to pull this government down and call an election and team up with the Bloc on that, because it would be a one and done. But that's not where we are, and we haven't been in this country on principled politics for a really long time. And Carney's going to get his dream team, and if it's true that there's another Conservative crossing, which would be a Conservative of convenience like Chris Etremont. And by the way, there is information that's being leaked on Twitter that he was musing about this and talking about his winnability as a Conservative. So he's never been the type of Conservative like the Stephen Harper type Conservative that we are more familiar with. He's been a Conservative of convenience. So I say, see you later, because him leaving didn't really matter. Again, point to what you said, Derek. NDP and Elizabeth May team up, and Carney's got his dream team, or at least I guess what we would consider a dream team. So it's just all about performance. But I think this brings in, and I was speaking to a couple of Stephen Harper Conservatives and last night, and I said, this will have to be a conversation that Conservatives have leading into the leadership review. That sticky number, that sticky 10 points that Pierre just can't seem to get up and beyond, that has to be a conversation that the party has. And I'm probably going to get a ton of hate mail right now and bad tweets. Right. But with something, that's what really is the sticking point in this whole vote thing.
Okay. Cory, I feel like there could be a few more. This crop of Conservatives is on aggregate more conservative than the team that Poilievre inherited. We had Aaron O'Toole there, who was a particularly unconservative conservative in many ways, at least. Poilievre's team is a bit more robust, but I mean, there's obviously a heck of a lot of it. It's still a diverse coalition. I don't really, if you're going to get a floor crosser like that it comes from either urban Ontario or parts of Atlantic, it's not as surprising. You know what it's like. Atlantic Canada, the difference between conservatives and liberals was mostly for many generations until not that long ago. Are you from a conservative, a Protestant family or a Catholic family, or are you English? Are you French? And that's kind of the way it is. That's less of it now, but it's the ideological differences between the parties there are particularly small. I don't know. How much do you think it is Carney's going to be able to pick off two more? And I think the NDP caucus also might have some pickings. Every single one of those guys is going to be like, we are in for a miserable 4 years. We don't have official party status. The party is utterly bankrupt. It might even become officially bankrupt at some point here. I know you've talked about that. There's got to be a few more if Carney wants to cobble together. And I'm not sure it's ever happened before in Canadian political history where someone's gone from an official minority to an official majority without an election.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly trying, because that window is narrow. And as you said, there's a few vulnerable MPs who could make the jump. Whether or not they do it before the budget vote or not is arguable, I guess, because it does look opportunistic, but they're putting the feel out. I'm with you, though, that I think even if he doesn't get the crossers, we're not having an election. It's not happening. It's not the tea leaves. The parties aren't in condition to fight it. If it comes to it, and they're up against it, and then the Conservatives remain adamant and there aren't crossers, we can expect suddenly a handful of Conservative MPs will have had bad oysters in the parliamentary cafeteria and be lost in the washrooms when the vote comes up, and it'll pass narrowly. I mean, that's just kind of the way the game is played. They're going to bluster. Poilievre can't afford to come out and support the budget, but he can't afford to bring it down either. So we're going to see that sort of posturing in the next couple of weeks, and it'll pass.
Well, Nigel, if any of the opposition parties could withstand an election, it would be the Conservatives. But unless Poilievre wins, then his leadership, you don't often even get two kicks at the can and not win anymore. One kick at the can. No one's getting two kicks at the can anymore. Harper got one to come up short, but he had massively improved the party standings. I don't think Poilievre would get a third if he didn't make it. But I think the Conservatives, I mean, they'd have a shot. I give them a 1 in 3 shot of winning the election today, but I think Canadians are still kind of a wait and see mode. If anyone wants an election, it is the Liberals. Do you think Carney wants an election to secure an outright majority, but then risk maybe not winning? Or do you think he prefers to just try to pick up a couple floor crossers and cobble together a majority that way?
Well, I'm not the Carney whisperer, but I will say that if he wanted another election, he could easily enough have fixed the budget speech so that nobody could support it. I mean, the Conservatives already hate the idea of the debt that we're taking on, and the NDP, probably some of the Liberals too, are scandalized that the federal civil service has been reduced as much as it has, but not as much as it could have been, which makes, so he pulled his punches there a little bit. Now he's accepting the resumes from other members. I think he wants to carry on, and he wants to get started on what he's set forth to do because, well, it's taken him a number of months to get to this point. I think the man has a mission, so my guess is that he doesn't want an election.
Just remember, guys, remember a couple of weeks ago, Carney met with all the party leaders. And so thinking about Pierre, and we should give him credit, he grew Conservative vote significantly in the last election. The problem was was the aging population that we would need. And so I want to make that clear. He did an incredible job there. But Pierre went into a meeting with Carney like the other leaders. And apart from hearing that, Pierre had told Carney that you're not to go over for 48.5 billion or something in this debt. Otherwise, we won't support you. We actually didn't hear what else Pierre had asked for. And I began to think about this when I saw another significant boost to the CBC, who already has several solid revenue streams. And we all know the fight about the CBC. And so I won't just circle the drain on that one. But there was a lot in that budget that I began to wonder, so did Pierre know about some of this? Wasn't this on some of his attack list? I would have gone after the emissions cap. I would have gone after the suite of the anti-oil or anti-pipeline bills, the C68 and C48, or C69 and C48. But we never ever found out from the Conservatives, whether it was the Lip or the leader himself. We never found out how he held Carney accountable. And that should be a question many people start to ask, like, where was the game of chicken? I want to know about that stuff.
Yeah, and I just point out as kind of a mini parting shot on this topic, before I put a pin in it, that Carney ran very seriously to get his seat in Ottawa in the European constituency, saying, I will not cut the civil service. Bureaucrats will all keep their jobs. And the Liberal candidate who ended up defeating Pierre Poilievre, his main point going door to door was, knock, knock, do you work for the government? Pierre Poilievre is going to cut jobs working for the government. And the Liberals, this is why I like it when Liberals lie, because generally they campaign on doing crazy Liberal stuff, but sometimes reality will come up and slap them in the face. These are pretty small cuts to the size of the bureaucracy. They're very small. But the Liberals ran on, we're going to continue to grow at hunky-dory. No one's losing their jobs. Haven't seen much in the way of criticism of this, even from the Conservatives, but certainly haven't seen any of the hypocrisy of this pointed out. So whatever his name is, what's his nuts, who defeated
Fanjoy?
Yeah, Fanjoy. Fanjoy in the Carleton constituency that beat Poilievre. This was his main thing. And I haven't heard a peep from him. This was the platform he ran on. So, okay. Bring it closer to home here in Alberta. We don't really get a lot of recall in Canada. For the longest time, BC was the only province to have it on the books. And it was only technically on the books. It's never been actually technically used in BC. There was one case where it was effectively used. The guy resigned first. So it was effectively used, but it was at this wild margin that no one could effectively hit. Kenny brought it into Alberta, but set the bar extremely high. It's had some tweaking since with Smith. I think Kenny would have been the first MLA in Alberta recalled if his leadership if he had tried to hold on to leadership. I think he would have been recalled by fellow Conservatives. But obviously that didn't happen. He lost leadership. But the UCP brought in the back to work legislation, made a preemptive strike with the notwithstanding clause. Can't challenge it. Here's your deal. That's it. Because that strike was going to go on forever. No one could really figure out what is it the ATA wants. They were given a big raise, all this stuff. So it was fine. But then they freaked out after. Of course, they were going to be pissed off. I expected to be pissed off. And then they said, we're going to recall the Minister of Education, Dimitro Nicolaides, in Calgary Bow. I mean, if you're going to target someone, that made sense, because he's the education minister. So, okay, there's a face on it. And he was in a very tight race in that constituency with the NDP. So it's not like a rock-ribbed, rural, deep blue conservative ridings. That would have been a logical strategic choice. They started with that. Then they've expanded it to every single conservative MLA in Alberta. They call it total recall, which kind of reminds me, I'm pretty sure they're borrowing on, I remember, way before we had memes and stuff. Remember, we had Jib Jab. Remember Jib Jab online?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they had
To have those weird cartoons.
they had some fun political cartoons. Let's play that quick. This reminds me, total recall. All right, so there's Arnold Schwarzenegger. This isn't a recall. This is a total recall. I mean, that was good branding. So I think this is a good brand. Total recall. It's fun.
Yeah.
But they're obviously not going to succeed. I think if they targeted just say Dimitro Nicolaides because of the vulnerability of that constituency, maybe a handful of others, maybe they could make some headway. But by instead of taking a sniper rifle, they're trying to drop napalm. I feel like that's not going to work.
Yeah, no, it's just the Gil McGowan version of the long ballot committee. They're just trying to use the process against itself to abuse what should be a means to recall somebody if they've done something beyond the pale. If it's an MLA who committed an odious crime or never showed up for work or things like that. Part of why they're spreading now for the shotgun blast too, though, is for a recall. It's not like Fabio's petition for the referendum, or Thomas Lukasik, as some people might refer to him as. That's where you could have your resources all the way across the province. Every single petitioner for this recall has to be registered with Elections Alberta with an ID badge, and they have to live in the constituency.
You can't petition if you don't live in the
No, you cannot qualify for one of those petitioners' badges unless you live within the constituency. So you can't take 500 union members from Edmonton and flood them into Nicolaides riding for a weekend and go out and petition and get signatures. They have to live there. That really limits the amount of what you can galvanize to get out to work on these campaigns. I looked at the numbers, for example, too, just to show people the logistics of this. So I used Angela Pitt's riding because that's the other one they've targeted and they've already qualified for. So they would need 60% of the votes cast. That was one of the improvements because it used to be 60% of those eligible, I believe, on an official petition on paper, witnessed, all that good stuff. Within 90 days. That'd be about 15,000 signatures in Airdrie East, and assuming all of them are valid, so closer to 16, 17,000. That's not as easy as some people might think it is, especially when you have to have local volunteers on the ground, or even paid people, but they have to be local doing this. So we'll see. As you said, if you targeted just a couple, maybe they could really pull that off. But now that they realize that they can't just target like that with the resources, now they're looking to broaden it, and I don't think it'll have much success. I mean, talk about Brooks or something if they went after the premier. I mean, come on. I mean, you get a lot. This is also under the assumption that people will sign it, that they are interested in having a by-election, that they are that upset with their representatives. So a neat publicity thing, a neat name, but I don't think it's going to add up to much. But the other part is it's going to cost a lot of money. Elections Alberta is already saying they're going to need $14,000 if this happens, because that's a whole lot of petitions to track and people to register and resources to direct. I don't know if everybody's going to be thrilled with that.
Yeah. At least this comes after the Alberta Federation of Labor's president, Gil McGowan, who's a known hardline Marxist. And I'm not just throwing around like, this guy wants to raise my taxes by 1%. He's a communist. No, this guy is a capital K communist. But he was saying, we need a general strike. I feel like the total recall campaign here is kind of their way. Like, Gil says crazy shit like all the time. He's got to put the bottle down in one hand, put the microphone in the other hand down. Take a deep breath, Gil. But he's, he wanted a general strike, and I feel like he got on the phone, called the first private sector union guy in the AFL, and says, "All right, Jimmy, your boilermakers, your pipe fitters, your welders, how are they feeling about going on strike so that they could pay more taxes to give teachers, I don't know, a 20% raise?" And guy on the other end says, I don't know anyone here who wants to do that. It's not our fight. We don't give a shit. So he calls for this general strike. It's going to be a great uprising. He says he wants to overthrow the government. Okay, Gil. All right. I guess we're like 1918 here, and we're just going to overthrow the government with the general strikes. So I feel like he got on the phone, and everyone told him to get stuffed. And he's got to do something. So they have to make some kind of performative thing. And that's it. Fine. We're going to recall everyone.
It's unfair play. I mean, it's getting to an election without actually having the ability to trigger the election. And my version of that is a gentleman by the name of Paul Finch, who's the head of the BCGEU. And I just had 25,000 workers finally return back to work, and not thinking, not caring once for what British Columbians were going through, got one of the most massive platinum pension pay raises in the history of BC. And so I think that it's interesting because I've been watching Alberta and watching what Albertans are saying, just not political commentators, but just average Albertans or parents about, how that teacher strike went and how it was resolved. And I think initially it got a little frothy, but now parents are just like, yay, the kids are back. I don't want to talk about it again. And I don't want to get involved in your politics. I just want the kids to be back. And like I said, some of them may have been questioning how that came about and the decision that the premier made. But
we're having Elise's connection's getting a little. That's okay.
But
all right.
Is it better now?
Maybe. I don't know. You're gonna have to talk.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Anyway, I don't think there's an appetite in Alberta for these strikes. And I can tell you right now, the union completely jumped the shark with the public here. This is the first time that I saw, blue collar towns turning against their union members that were walking out. So I don't think that's reality, and if Nenshi wants to have an election, he should do it all by himself with his cast of, characters over at the NDP.
Well, if these guys theoretically succeeded and, even getting a few recalled, Nigel, I think the logical play then would be, okay, well, rather than have 50 odd recall elections, theoretically, well, we're just going to have an election. Like you just say, fine, we're just calling an election. Based on current polls, UCP looks in a pretty damn good position to win that. I would imagine that's just what would happen if these guys even theoretically succeeded.
And
run on a platform of banning the AFL.
I think in a year's time, everybody's going to look back on this and say, well, it was exciting, but really we did kind of overstate our case. As you said earlier, the teachers, it's hard to know what they really want. I mean, they'll tell you all sorts of things, but when you get right down to it, 12% is not bad. And a lot of them were looking for increases due to moving up the scale and so forth. So I have to think it's not the money, just the money. Well, what was the rest of it and who was going to give it to them? The school board, the government? Hard to say. So all of this leads back to my personal theory, which is that the AFL thought, well, this is a great cause that we can jump on. The teachers are very good at organizing. They're prepared to spend their strike money on advertising against the government. And we can have a workers' revolution. And then it didn't happen. And now they're trying to save face. That's kind of where the thing ends up. So, yeah, given that things can change very fast in politics, as we all know. But given that right now, the UCP looks pretty strong in the polls, it's hard to imagine how this thing plays out well. So everybody's going to look a bit sheepish in a little while. So, well, that was fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's put a pin in it there. we'll go to our parting shots. Give first one up to Elise.
Oh, you guys are going to like this one. Less than an hour ago, the David Eadie and his government signed another agreement with First Nations into reinforcing a full-on tanker ban for British Columbia. So my parting shot goes to Mr. Eby, who is now overreaching his position as Premier of British Columbia and basically defying the agreement he had with Mark Carney when Mr. Carney was first elected, that there would be open dialogue and flexibility around how they were going to approach the tanker issue. But this is shots fired to Premier Daniel Smith, Premier Scott Moe, and I think even out in central Canada, who are softening to the idea of pipelines and understanding we have to get our product to Tidewater. So this will be interesting how this plays out. It's only an hour old, but it's definitely shots fired.
Yeah. I would just point out for the record, this does follow in a proud BC tradition of extending the provincial government's jurisdiction illegally into federal areas concerning maritime issues. BC actually did build its own warships and navy at one point. They gifted it to the Royal Canadian Navy, but I think it was during the First World War, maybe the Second.
First World War, they picked up 2 submarines in Seattle.
Yes, that's it. They did build them, but they bought 2 U.S. submarines. There was a British Columbia Navy at some point. And I guess just for the record, British Columbia had a bigger submarine fleet back then than Canada has today. So, good on BC. I want to bring the BC Navy back. Cory.
Well, it came up earlier just with that tree planting program. Just those numbers, 6 years, $267.7 million, and they achieved about 12% of their target. So for people who really want the government to take over children's lunch programs and daycare, this is why I hose it, folks, because it's going to cost $10,000 a month for each child, and 9 out of 10 children won't be able to get in.
Yeah. All right, Nigel.
So, going through the budget documents, and I come across this astonishing little nugget that they want Canada to enter in the Eurovision Song Contest.
What? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I need a double take on that. I got to fill out my application form.
This is okay.
It's real?
It's crazy stuff. You may remember the first place where Mr. Carney went after he was elected was over to Europe. But as they're getting
Mr. Carney could compete.
100? No, not so fast. I nominate Lawrence d'Entremont to go over and represent Canada and saying it's time to say goodbye.
Okay. Wow.
Shit.
You
can pronounce his name.
That was a banger.
Okay, you're going to have to flag that to Dave in the newsroom when we get out of the studio here. That's good shit. All right. Well, I don't know how I'm going to top that. All right. A lot of people who are not paying attention to American news right now might not know this, but there is a titanic civil war erupting on the American right now. This is not like we've seen really ever. This is a new thing. I don't know how to do it justice with enough nuance, not get in trouble here, but I guess like in short, it's kind of a new, very, very hard right. I would think it'd be fair to say far right, except the term far right gets so abused. It gets applied to people like us all the time. So it's like, well, what's far right to people who are far right? I don't know.
This is covering it well.
Yeah.
This is extreme. Extreme right.
Yeah, I think it's a case where not even meaning with judgment. It's probably a fair term to apply. I just don't know how to apply it anymore because it's been so abused and devalued. But I think some of it comes from a legitimate skepticism of the influence of Israel on the United States' foreign policy and whatnot. Some of it then goes much further than I think otherwise valid, reasonable, rational criticism. But I think it comes from what has been a suppression of any discussion around it, and now it's just kind of like a simmering pot that's blown, and it's a very, very messy fight. I guess the most prominent one on kind of the insurgent side would be this guy named Nick Fuentes, young, like he's like 27 or something. very hugely successful podcaster.
Reuters or something.
Reuters, yeah. I can't. I should not have picked this as a parting shot. I mean, this is a whole episode in of itself to get into. Which one you're just you don't even want to get into it. But look, I'm just going to say that there's this gigantic fight, and it is fascinating to watch. I've never ever seen anything like this in American politics. Certainly not in Canadian politics, which is even more controlled. But American politics has, I think, a lot more fluidity to it for new players. So
it's an interesting point. If you were the kind of Democrat who would vote for Kennedy in 1960, who would you go? Where would you go now?
You'd have absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a terrible parting shot to pick. I should have just made a whole. You can't even make that one of our main topics. It has to be a whole damn show if you want to even begin to scratch the surface. And all you're going to do is get in trouble, I guess. But
I don't think so. I think it's a great topic. I think it's a great topic. We're watching a revolution, and it's about time. The time was long ago. So it was great to see certain people, even Barry Weiss came out, and I thought it was fantastic. Ben Shapiro is a hero in my book. So well done. I think you did well landing on that one.
Yeah. I'm not sure that the response to it was particularly helpful to their own cause, seeing guys like Representative Ari Fine saying, like, damn right we are in the business of canceling. I think that was the wrong message for these guys to send in their defense.
So we're going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I'm stopping the rabbit hole there.
Derek, remember this Nick Fuentes guy, self-proclaimed Nazi, talked about slapping women. Women are second-class citizens that use the R word.
Yeah. We're in. Anyway,
he deserves to be rolled over.
I'm not going to do a Nick Fuentes best of compilation here. I know that people should go and take a look at this stuff for themselves. All I'm saying is the response to it, I don't think helped their cause. There was a way to respond to it that I think would have hit the mark a lot better, and I don't think they hit it there. I'm going to put some concrete on that rabbit hole right now because that's we're already out of time. All right, Elise, thank you. Cory,
thank
Nigel,
you guys,
as always, and thank all of you for joining us here today on the Pipeline. Remember to go to westernstandard.news, become a member, support the work we're doing, get full access to all Western Standard content. Go to westernstandard.news. Right now, it's only $10 a month or $100 a year. Thank you very much for your time, and God bless.